Good morning.
Good morning.
This is an interesting Tuesday. I believe this is the very first Tuesday, guest Thursday, we have had in 2.5 years.
It is. It's also the first Tuesday of the current World Cup champion.
It is. All World Cup all the time. Amazingly, it is not on in the background, but be prepared to see
because we are
blurry soccer in the background for every live stream from here until December 18th. Yes. Yeah, December 18th. Wow, that is not that far away. All right, we're not here to talk about the World Cup. We are here to bring on a repeat guest as we wrap up Daily Dose. This was a guest that I knew a little bit from some professional work, but we were not at all prepared for the depth and complexity of the work that David has created since getting sober. So let's bring our friend David Whitesock to the screen. Good morning, David.
Hey, David.
Hello, Dana. Hello, Dr. Mary. Good to see you both again.
It's fantastic to see you too. I was looking, you were episode 164, February 25th, 2021. So while the snow looks sort of similar to the last time we talked to you, a lot of other things have changed considerably since then.
A little bit, yeah. But, you know, as much as things change, sometimes they stay the same.
Well, that can be true. One thing you said to me before we got on, which is a change, is you said, I've been traveling a lot. Not a lot of travel in February 2021.
That's true. No, you know, it's fascinating between, so about the summer of 2021, we started to make a bunch of decisions about how we were going to kind of propel our business. And it was all about getting out and just being out amongst people again. And so since August of I'd say September of last year, it has just been a year's worth of going to conferences, being in amongst people that do the work that we do and the folks that we intersect with. So lots of human interaction, a lot more than we saw in 2020.
And how has that been for you? I'm fixing our title because I realized it says joins us on guest Thursday, and then that's where it stops. So I have to edit this in real time. That's how that works. On Tuesday. I hope I spelled it right. I did. Okay. So I have seen you all over LinkedIn. You have been everywhere. Talk about what that's done for Commonly Well and the Recovery Capital Index and all the other work that you're doing. And then we'll go back and talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my previous work, you know, we did peer support, peer coaching for people with addiction. You know, we had something of value to offer. There were people that provide addiction care, whether it's clinical or otherwise, that would, you know, go to conferences and have booths. And that just wasn't a world that I even participated in. You know, I'd go to conferences, but I was mostly there to be a fly on the wall or to go speak. Mm-hmm. And, what I found out pretty quickly is once you start your own business and you're kind of in that space, how do you get the most eyeballs on what you do? And how can you have really meaningful interactions with people where they can sort of, although it's software, sort of touch and feel what you do? But more importantly, and this isn't to throw my arm out, patting myself on the back, but to actually meet me, the guy who invented the thing that they're going to buy. There's a lot of value in that. And so you build a bunch of relationships. And so what has it meant? It's meant building really great connections in a field that is desperate for deep connections and just, you know, getting the flywheel going, as they say in business, getting a couple of customers, they start to meet you, they talk to other people. And so here we are, we're still thriving.
That's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
So explain for people who don't remember this conversation, because it was a long time ago now, or who are new to you through us, this Recovery Capital Index model that you created, because it's just so, to me, it's such a human thing. It's not just a thing for people in recovery, but it happens to be specifically for people in recovery.
Yeah. I mean, it's everything that the both of you talk about each week with people. It's the 360-degree complexity of the human condition. And we know that for those of us that struggled with addiction, there's a boogeyman, there's a demon, there's a thing that sits in front of us. It's the elephant in the room, and that's the bottle or the drug. And we've got to deal with that, of course. But I think for most people, most of the time, it's something else in our orbit that is the motivating factor. Okay, what is that? And if we can help people sort of see what that is, maybe through, so we use a survey, an assessment, a tried and true assessment that basically is you doing an inventory of yourself across 22 indicators, 9 components and 3 domains. So we break it up into, bits and pieces that are easier to understand about yourself. And then we quantify it. And so you can start to see progress. So yeah, I can look at a calendar and go, okay, didn't drink today. Did I improve the rest of my life? And where did that happen? And I can point to those places. Or I can work with somebody and somebody can look at the results and say, hey, Dana, you walked in here feeling dejected and feeling like you're not going anywhere, but you've increased by 10 points. You're increasing in these areas. Your relationships are getting stronger. It seems like you've got purpose in your life. Let's build on that. All right. And so we can use a little bit of data, a little bit of inventory, a questionnaire, communication to help individuals reframe who they are and where they are to get over this big giant hurdle that's just been a monkey on their back for so long.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, oh my gosh, that idea went right out of my head. Oh, shoot, it'll come back. I know it will. I rewatched our conversation this morning and you asked an interesting question as an academic. You said, do you remember what you said? It's not a quiz. I can tell you what you said.
I think it was something about your publication. I noticed that you had your academic letters of recognition after each author. And I just asked you if, did you have a hard time getting that published? Because a lot of professional scientists didn't like what you were saying.
And thought it was like soft and fluffy, not measurable and quantifiable.
Yeah, they probably didn't think it was a real scientific study.
Well, that's interesting. So it wasn't a scientific study. We didn't do a study. What we did is we applied scientific methods to determine whether or not the particular assessment measures what it says it measures. And so there's 3 or 4 tried and true scientific methodologies for determining that using, biostatisticians do it all the time, in research studies. And so I think what was the hardest part when we were looking for a publication in particular was they'd look at the lead author, that was me, and my credentials were a JD. And here we were submitting to, medical publications. And they're like, who's this guy? But, the rest of the team, they were MAs in education and PhDs in biostatisticians. And, we had an MD on the team. And so, that's what mattered. What mattered was we wanted to show the world that this was a collaborative team from multidisciplines looking to create a solution that is multidisciplinary. And we had to check the box. We in order to get an instrument like we've developed accepted in kind of the medical realm, we had to check a box. It had to be quote unquote validated and reliable and meet certain levels of fidelity. And it did all that.
I remember what I wanted to say. What I think is so fascinating about this monthly survey that goes out to participants is that what it does is it reminds you, because we've taken it, it reminds you that you are not solely your problem. You are as complex a whole human being as everybody else. And it's, it checks in on your financial space, your spiritual space, your relational space, your home and food and all those things. Well, those are in the realm of all people, not just people who are struggling to stay sober, to get sober, to recover, however you want to say it. And I love that it is not about you're broken. We have to fix you. How's this other stuff? How's this other stuff is the makeup of being a human being. And I love that.
Yeah, that's nicely put, actually.
Well, I mean, I couldn't say it any better than that, Dana. I honestly, I think this is the thing that cripples a lot of people when they're trying to overcome this is society says, like you just said, you're broken. And oh, by the way, if you pick up that bottle again, you have failed, you're done, start over. And that keeps people from going back to an AA meeting. It keeps people from going back to their therapist. It keeps people from picking up the phone and talking to their loved ones. It keeps people homeless. It is the number one thing, in my view, that is the thing that sets people back. And we can fix that by simply just changing the narrative.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the external narrative and the internal narrative, right? I was just looking back at some ads that we did at my previous place, Face It Together, because they're so powerful. And it's this individual sitting in his car with his phone, basically recording him, if you will. And he is doing a video call to his mom on day one. Mom, I'm sober today. This is day one. And then the next day it's, Mom, I'm sorry, I slipped. I'm starting over again. And it does that for like 30 seconds. And at the end of it, the guy's just crushed because it's always day one. It's like he's never getting anywhere. She's never getting anywhere. And so the question just becomes, how do we do that? How do we change that narrative? Because life is continuing. We're going that way anyway.
Yes. Yeah. It's sometimes I try to relate these conversations to things that are not specific to addiction, because I think people can sort of see the mission of Daily Dose and go, oh, that's not for me. When in actuality, the conversations of Daily Dose are almost always for anyone and everyone. But, I've been very, very open with the fact that I had this unplanned pregnancy at 22, that it derailed me, that it took me down a path I never expected to go, certainly shut the door to a lot of things I hoped to do, and was the defining event of my life, probably until July of this year. I have sort of based all my work on it. It's been this whole thing. Certainly, it hasn't stayed as traumatic as it was almost 27 years ago, but it has been the way that I have sort of moved through the world internally. Absolutely. I'm Dana Del Val. I was a young single mom. And this summer, I thought to myself, that's a tired old story. I'm tired of that story. Everybody else is tired of that story. That story has not been true for longer than it was true. What are you holding on to this for? Let it go. I don't know that I will ever actively speak publicly about it again as anything other than, yep, that was a thing. This was a thing. It's such a now important but insignificant piece of my life. It does not need to be the way that I show up in the world. And I think that that's what the Recovery Capital Index can help people who are bravely living in recovery also do. It's not to say that it wasn't a piece of you, that it won't always be a piece of you, but it is not the entirety of you.
Yeah, I love that. And thanks for sharing that story too. I've caught that over the last couple of months. And
well, if you're not dead, you know it. Yes.
There is a remarkable TED Talk. The woman's name is Deborah Jarvis, and she was a chaplain, or maybe she might still be a chaplain in a hospital system. Okay. And she would comfort cancer patients, for years. And I won't give away this story, but of course she ended up getting cancer herself. And she tells this great anecdote of, she'd get on a bus, basically, the metaphorical bus, and you've got 30 seconds to describe yourself. And what happens? We pick the one moment that's most meaningful out of our life. And sometimes it's that cancer, or it's the survivor. I'm a survivor of cancer. Like the first words are, I'm a cancer survivor. And she was kind of relating it to some of the challenges around sort of breast cancer and everybody wearing pink and kind of upholding that kind of ethos of the story. And she basically says, I didn't find my new life until I dropped that cancer was no longer the thing that defined me. That there were other things. Like she's like, I sit next to the bedside of people dying. Why doesn't that define me?
Oh,
Why do I
absolutely.
root back to this? And she uses a phrase that I'm not going to give away, but it's when you hear her actually say to a relative of hers who also got, struggled with cancer and survived it, like you have to move on. It's just so powerful to hear that. And I've been kind of going through that myself too, about, my own addiction and the story that I tell. And I'll speak a lot in different places, and you hear the same story. They're really important. These recovery stories, they're incredibly important, but I'll tell you, if you've heard one, you've kind of heard them all. No offense to each individual.
Yep.
And at the right moment and the right time, they're incredibly powerful and necessary. But I think when we start to sort of move up a little bit further, as if we start talking in the realm of social change, we've got to shift that narrative just a little bit, because my view is that story's not working at scale.
Well, clearly it's not working, or we wouldn't see the numbers exponentially getting higher of people who are struggling. I mean,
Another
COVID,
2,000 people a year died of overdose deaths in the last 18-month cycle. It's like, what are we doing? So
right.
I think we all need to collectively just sit back and go, it's not working. We got to start over.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Patty Sen says, love this discussion. Thanks for joining,
Oh,
Patty.
hey, Patty.
Fantastic, Patty Sen in Soul Solutions. Well, so David, what, in thinking about that whole thing, which has my brain just churning about 12 million miles an hour now, setting down the model that we have used thus far, or at least thinking about adapting it, what is next for the work that you do as you continue to sort of live this out, both personally and professionally, and evolve it as you go?
Yeah, that's what 2022 has kind of been about. I didn't know this was going on in real time until about 3 months ago, but just being a sponge and getting a lot of information and meeting a lot of people, I think what we realized is that what our work is going to be helping people tell better stories. What ultimately will be is an data analytics company, but how do we better pull that information out to tell a better story? And whether it be at the individual level, the organizational level, or the community level. And so right now, a lot of people will get information and they see it in a report or a dashboard, or, I'll use Patty as an example. I'll just use her as an example with Soul Solutions in Fargo. Like they'll be in operation for a year, and then they'll hire an evaluator who will come in and do a program evaluation, and that'll take a year to do. And then another 6 months have gone by, and it's been 18 months since they actually pulled the information. And then they'll write a report. It'll be in a PDF, and the board will see it, and a few community members and some donors will see it. And then what? Right.
Oh, yes.
And like 2 years have gone by. And no offense to the good doctor over here who works in academia, but we see this with research as well. Like this great
absolutely.
research.
It's what they call.
It's 2.5 years old.
What was it referred? My old PhD referred to it as the.
Well, you think while David
the
talks.
The educational lag. Like as soon as you publish something, in the whole process of getting all the graphs together and writing it and getting it reviewed, that information is like a year old.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same thing. So when it's a current paper, is it though?
And no offense to you, and I know you spend a lot of time on this, but you write it in a language that the rest of us who are operating facilities or doing the day-to-day, we can't understand it.
This is what David's master's.
My name is Dana.
Dana's master's thesis was rewriting the academy, and of course she had a lot of time getting her thesis accepted by the disquisitions desk because it wasn't written in Charles Dickens' verse.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's true. What are we publishing all this work for if it's living in perpetuity and no one's seeing it, whether it's academic or cultural or societal or medical. What are we doing?
Yeah. And so you have patients in the middle of this, right? You have people, individuals and family members coming into these facilities who are afraid. They're filled with shame. Uncertainty drives them. They're hanging on by a thread of hope. And a lot of information is collected and pulled out of them that goes into a black box, doesn't really get used, isn't being utilized in the best way possible. And maybe more information is being taken that is necessary. And so the question is, how do we move that process along a little bit faster, make organizations evaluatable in real time, and set up systems where the folks that are the academics, the doctors and the PhDs can say, here's the process you need to put in place to actually churn this information out. So it basically is the written academic paper, but in practice right now. Like, we do all of that in real time, and we make that information instantly available, instantly actionable, and help people recover faster. And then tell a better story out of that. So if you are going through this process, we can use the best in communication and behavioral knowledge to write, not just throw a graph at you, but and I know I'm sort of telling myself right now in real time what it is that we're trying to accomplish, but how do we use the right language that's motivating to you? Like, hey, Dana, in the last 7 days, Apple does this really well with their watch and all of their graphs. It's like, in the last 7 days, you moved 5 days out of 7. Congratulations, keep going. Like, it wasn't you missed 2 and failed. It was you did 5 of 7. Like, these are little things that we could just fix in terms of the language that we talk around some of this information. And that's, I think, what we're evolving toward is how do we change the way we think about some of those processes?
Not to be reductive about this, but the first thing I thought of when you said that was how unbelievably motivating a sticker chart is for a toddler.
Yes.
So when my now 27, almost 27-year-old was 2.5, 3, well, you go to the store, you let them pick out the stickers, you make the chart, and you're not punishing them, you're rewarding them. It's a reward-based system, which is always going to motivate people more than the shame of not doing it. That congratulations on 5 days versus what a jerk, you missed 2. Yeah. Why do we do that with this one thing where shame is already such a heavy weighted blanket on the individual, the family, the workplace, the everywhere, everybody is already carrying such a mantle of shame. Why would we exacerbate it by reminding them to their face where they have failed? When it just,
there is something that I've always, it's kind of, a counterproductive thing. You can't live in the past. You as a recovering addict, you hear these platitudes, like, even this saying, don't look for me at my last address, I don't live there anymore. But when you go to an AA meeting, the first thing you say is, hi, I'm Maz, I'm an alcoholic.
And I would say you're not an alcoholic. You haven't had a drink in 5.5 years.
Now, saying that, I'm very proud of the fact that I am a happy, smiling alcoholic, definitely enjoying sobriety, because that's kind of an anchor now. That's what I am. And I'm not ashamed of it, but it's almost like you're stuck in the past. Describe yourself. I'm a happy, smiling alcoholic. That's what I'd say. And I'm proud of it. But that's almost like you're stuck somewhere 5 years ago.
Well, it goes back to your bus point. Is that chaplain a breast cancer survivor, or is she something else who happens to also have had breast cancer? Am I something else who happens to also have had an unplanned pregnancy 27 years ago? Yes.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, it really is, David.
It's the differential between what defines us and what informs who we will
be. Yes, that's fantastic too.
Yes. Yeah.
Damn, you do good stuff, David. I tell you.
Yeah. See, that's David. Well done.
It's the D's.
Well, but I think so. This is just a collection of things that I've gathered up and sort of hoovered up over the years, and if nobody's read the book, read Simon Sinek's book on the infinite mindset. Right.
I know
I,
of
I
it. I've
think a
not read
lot.
all of it.
Yeah, I think Dr. Mary, what you're talking about in terms of the recovery space and saying, hey, I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict, and that's kind of who I am, and that's important for a lot of reasons. But in like the Simon Sinek thinking, that's very finite. That's a finite mindset versus an infant mindset of what does that mean then? Where do I apply that? Who then? What do I get to be? And how do I look beyond this one point in time?
Well, to go back to your point about not to reach out my arm and pat us on the back, but I think, I mean, that sums up the reason we started Daily Dose was because you could either be a quiet, happy, smiling alcoholic enjoying sobriety, or you could say, boy, maybe if we come out and talk about some of this, it could make a difference for somebody else because they can see an example, they can hear all these stories, they can interact with people, blah, blah, blah. That sort of, we took something that felt very shame-filled and finite and sort of made it infinite because we were unwilling to live in the box that society said we needed to live in.
And I will say I've shared dozens of your conversations simply because no one else is really doing what you're doing. There aren't two married people sitting in their house having these conversations. I mean, they probably are, but they're not doing it live on
streaming. They're not. Yes.
Well, not two that like each other still, I suppose.
And so the library that you've built, and so maybe this will evolve into something else and something different, which I hope it does.
Yeah, I do too.
But the library of what you've built is immensely valuable, and it's still got value going forward. And I think people are gonna, what is the Robert Kennedy, the ripple of hope? There are ripples to continue.
Well, that's
That's
nice. A fantastic compliment. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And it's a great way to wrap up this conversation because we feel that way about the work that you're doing too, David. I think to have the quantifiable, the qualifiable, the measurable, the feel good, the hard, the soft, all those things, it's going to take a whole seismic shift in the way we do all this work, the way we all show up to start to really make systemic change in the addiction world. Because otherwise, if we continue on the path we're on, that is a doomed, failed path. So I just we applaud the work that you've done. We thank you for coming back and giving us an update and joining us. And really, really thank you for all the support you've shared with us.
And thank you for all that you do as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. As I said to you in an email, go as deep as you possibly can in the community that you are. I think Fargo needs you. North Dakota needs you. Keep doing what you're doing because more people need to go deep. That is going to have the greatest, longest lasting impact. And I think you're so well positioned to do it. And if I can be a cheerleader, I will. Not if I can, I will be your cheerleader. Just let me know. So thank you for what you've done. I'm grateful for these conversations.
Well, we're grateful to be back in touch with you. Yeah. So happy end of 2022 and this year of sort of figuring out what's next. And we look forward to seeing what you do in 2023.
Yes, definitely.
Same. Happy Thanksgiving.
And you.
Thanks, David. You too. Everybody else, we'll see you on Thursday. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.